Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com. You don't need to expect us. We're already here.
Most are afraid of unknown depths, skirting shores thinking world flat, and with the island girls in celebration of new religion. Nobody led me or said this way. I sailed alone on makeshift raft with wind as companion. Fate for deliverance, confidence enough to assess new disposition. Seekers of lost paradise may seem fools to those who never sought the other worlds. Welcome to Momentary Zen with Zen Garcia. Visit www.fallenangels.tv. You're listening to Revolution Radio.
We must listen to the elders, learn from the wise ones in making their truths our own. Welcome, friends. I'm your host, Zen Garcia. This is Momentary Zen here on Revolution Radio. And I thank those of you that have and could for joining us. Kathy is with me riding shotgun. Kathy, are you there, sister?
Yes, I am. Hi, everyone.
Excellent. All right. Well, I appreciate everyone taking the time to join us this evening. I've got a very interesting show lined up. It's a topic that people have asked me about in question for several years, but I never really found enough information to kind of do a teaching on it. But I feel like at least now, um, having studied this from many different angles and having found more than three confirming witnesses to this as story, I'm going to present that material to you this evening just to put it out there. And it's quite an interesting perspective. And so Kathy and I will be sharing commentary on all that. But, and for those that have not gone to the Facebook site to know what we're speaking about, the topic for this evening is the Edenic garments of power, which were created for Adam. They were his priestly garments that were passed down through his lineage and generations until they were stolen by the seed of Cain and passed on to Nimrod and eventually Esau, and then after that, we're uncertain as to where they ended up. But it's an interesting story, to say the least. But before we go into all of that, I would like to share just some updates on some of the projects and things that we're involved in and that we're endeavoring to do with Sacred Word Publishing. Many of you have asked me about the availability of the new Enochian, the ancient Hebrew lunar solar Enochian calendar, and I just finished that up last night, so I have made it available. And I know that many are wanting to adhere to this ancient calendar system, and that if you had not heard the show where I verified that this calendar system was reintroduced to the Hebrew people and given to them during the Exodus, after their 400 years of being assimilated into the ancient Egyptian um, culture, civilization, and they're having assimilated many pagan ideas, just as they did when they were exiled into Babylon, and for 70 years, not even for 400 years, but over the course of 70 years, they assimilated many Babylonian pagan beliefs, and also had lost um, the use of their original language, the Hebrew, and they then assimilated the Aramaic as the lexicon, the predominant lexicon in language, the vernacular of that area and region. And so the Hebrew Torah, once they were freed from the bondage of Babylon by Cyrus and Darius, and then they were allowed to return to the Holy Land and to restore the Holy Temple, the because the Hebrew language was more a scholarly, priestly class language, that's when the Aramaic, the Targum, came into being, which are the holy scripture, the Pentateuch translations that I predominantly like to study from, even though I do read all of the various English translations. And whenever I do a study, I use all these parallel timelines and look at all the various translations in order to get the best understanding as far as whatever it is I may be looking into. But my preference is for the Targum because they are the original Aramaic translations of the Torah, the Hebrew Torah, and the English translations, even though they were only made available to us in the 1800s. I find that in studying them and looking into them, they provide a great deal of extra commentary and elaborate further upon most every passage and chapter, and things that may seem vague or ambiguous within the English translations of our Holy Bible. You can gain a great deal of information and knowledge from those Targum translations. And so, anyways, I will post a link sometime very soon on that show that I did about the Exodus, because we did that here on Revolution Radio. But I will also post a link to that calendar system for those that are interested. You can go to, for those that are not listening live and that maybe come to the archive, you can go to lulu.com and just look up the ancient Hebrew Enochian lunar calendar for 2017 and it will come up. But let me go ahead and put that link into the
I
chat
did.
room. Oh, okay, great. Thank you, Kathy. And also, sister, I wanted to ask you if there was any news, anything of interest that you wanted to bring up. I did want to mention one other thing as far as in reference to the Pizzagate. Just crazy. But I was watching a video earlier today about an individual that was doing some really profound investigation on the different people that were tied to and that came up as recommended friend profiles when you studied or tried to link to Jimmy Comment on Instagram. And he did some in-depth examination on some of these individuals, and it's clear that many of them need to be investigated by the FBI. I mean, because they are like him, have all the pedophilic iconography, symbolism, and the Pizzagate, the terms, the code language, all on their Instagram and their photos and obvious pedophilic references. And so I applaud this individual for doing this. There's so much great research coming out, but there was also one video that just absolutely shocked me. And I wanted to ask you if you had seen it, but it was about Joe Biden, and they were taking some photographs and with this family gathering. I don't know, it was a senator's family, and they came up and
That's
uh,
just one of the times they've caught it, by the way.
really, oh my gosh,
Yeah, this is repeated with him.
oh my gosh, that is insane. But for those that don't know what I'm talking about, and I'll try to find the link to this video as well. But they they recorded him saying to this 13-year-old little girl, basically ask her to stand in front of him, and then he rubs her like, I mean, like he's feeling her up. And then at the end of taking the photograph sessions, he leans over to her and tells her, about how horny he is to be close to her, and her family is standing right there and listening as well. And then he makes some obscure reference to uh, talk to my daughter Ashley about the film, and I'm like, oh my gosh, this is insane. First, for the family members to be right there, and then for him to say this to that 13-year-old little girl is just, my gosh, how, everything hidden in plain sight. But uh,
There's a video I just pulled up. It's called Compilation of Joe Biden Being Creepy, and it's over 2 minutes long. So he does this a lot. It's at official photo shoots like you are talking about here.
yeah,
So this is not a one-off thing with him. Creepy Uncle Joe. I've seen that used a lot.
God, it is just insane to me
Yeah, isn't that awful?
how, the parents, if that's indeed who they were, didn't just, why he didn't get his lights punched out right there on the stage, and then saying this to that little girl, for her to not be horrified and to, immediately run away and break down in tears. She has to be used to such behavior and to that kind of treatment, which in and of itself just lets you know just how perverse and pervasive this kind of behavior and this kind of thing is among the Washington elite. It's just crazy. Oh my gosh, it's just totally creepy. But
Yeah,
uh
I know. So it's not unexpected for you to be hearing that there are other people with images on accounts that are. I mean, they don't like with Jimmy Comet. They really don't fear that they will be found out because they're being covered up at the highest levels. It's like the Roman Catholic Church.
right.
So for this Pizzagate explosion of information to come out now, this is great. They're being exposed. It's like the flat Earth being exposed. I have to throw that in. I've been
Hmm.
attacked relentlessly lately. Anyway, that's my getting back. So this is the big story today, and this came from Mark Slavo at shtfplan.com. And the title of this article is "This is the Purge We All Knew Was Coming: Shutting Down Extremist Content." So it's gone up a few notches just today. Coming well, he starts it out. There have been murmurs about it all along. Someday they simply wouldn't allow certain things to remain on the internet any longer. So go read this article. But according to Yahoo News, they're saying web giants YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, and Microsoft will step up efforts to remove extremist content from their websites by creating a common database. And then one of the channels that I've been following lately, named Reality Calls, it's Fran. I don't remember her last name. She just put out a video that she got a strike for a video on Pizzagate. And it's, just exposing all of this. It's no different than anything else that would be exposing, you know, like a tabloid or not a tabloid, but you know what I mean. Like,
Right. Any story.
yes. And actually, I saw a tweet I thought was interesting. They said in 2003, rifle-toting Americans barge into Iraq after reading viral fake news story about weapons of mass destruction. This is where we are. It's Stasi all over again. It's, where'd our free speech go? And we were expecting this would happen. It's happening quickly.
Yeah, which it makes me wonder about that whole story of you know, the the guy that went up there from North Carolina with the AR-15 to Jimmy Comet, I mean to Comet Pizza, and then fired a shot into the restaurant, and then going in to free the children, but not
Right.
discovering
I
anybody.
saw
If that's a cover, if they did that
I
on
did see
purpose just
a
to throw,
story.
yeah,
Absolutely. I did see a story that that man's father is a child protective service affiliated somehow. I
Uh,
just glanced at it.
Interesting. Yeah.
So I know there's a lot more. I just haven't been looking as closely as
Right.
I usually do, but I know that a lot more to that. People have put out
Right.
videos. There's been stories. So yeah, this is definitely going to get uh, tightened down.
Yeah.
So
They're
and
doing. They're trying to, in every way they can, to start, leading people away and to try to associate Pizzagate as disinformation or conspiracy theorists, that
well,
blackball it.
and they are putting out these programs. YouTube, I'm sure Facebook is too, but YouTube has this Heroes program where they're encouraging trollish behavior to bring down channels. And I even experienced it today on our Facebook page where someone said, "You've been reported," about a video, I think having to do with Sandy Hook. So this is going to keep increasing.
Well, yeah, and the other thing that I had heard, I was listening earlier to a show on Dr. Sherry Tenpenny, and she was talking about the how they are soon going to be forcefully mandating vaccines, even adult vaccines, and that they were not going to allow people to get their driver's license or their passports if they don't have all of their
Wow.
vaccines updated. Yeah, it's crazy the kind of things that they're going to associate with them with. And she was speaking about how in California, Mississippi, and I forget the other place, but that there's three states right now that you you, you no longer have any kind of exemption unless it's medical. It's not like, you know, personal or religious or those kind of exemptions, which do
Right.
currently still exist in the other 47 states.
Most people aren't aware even.
Yeah, well,
Or,
they don't tell people about that,
yeah.
and then they try to basically bully parents into getting the vaccine, saying that your children can't go to school. But it's only in these three states that they only have medical exemptions, and a child can only be, to exempt out of the vaccines if they have been previously hurt by taking the
They
vaccines.
they must be incentivizing pharmacies and doctors too, because I know every time I go into Walmart now, they ask me, do you want to have your flu shot? Are you ready
Right,
to?
right.
Every single time, or to my doctor's office, they're pushing it.
They actually are. She was talking about that as well in this show, that um, if they get a certain high percentage of all of their patients to receive the vaccines, they then get a $400 bonus per child. And that's including even those that refuse the vaccines. Um, that the pharmaceutical companies are giving out these bonuses, and so that's why they are pushing it as hard as they can. And this is also resulting in the families and children that are refusing the vaccines, they're being dropped off of the rolls of these different physicians offices because they are trying to gain access to these bonuses.
Absolutely.
And so that's why they're bullying and pushing it in the degree that they are, and which to me it should be, criminal, because again, these vaccines are harming so many people. But um anyways, and so what I was talking about, the whole reason I brought her up in the whole as far as this particular show that I was listening to, is she had mentioned about how Facebook now has created and is regulating news information and stories, and how they had previously, before this recent change, they had a following of, like 1.5 million people, and whenever they posted anything, they would get a tremendous response. But now, um, because they are being censored, Facebook is no longer highlighting their stories or allowing them to, basically be shared and posted onto all of their followers' pages. And so few are even gaining access or getting the information. And so, they're being censored, and any kind of news story, as you were mentioning, which would be of relevance and connected to anything which is real, like this whole Pizzagate thing, um, all of that is being censored. And stories like anything to do with the Kardashians or,
Right.
celebrities or whatever, all of that is being pushed to the forefront, just like with what they have successfully done on mainstream news, basically um, subjected all of what is important to meaningless, nonsensical stories that matter nothing to really the what's going on with world, and
You
where
know,
people should get real news stories. Go ahead.
our own personal experience with Facebook 3 years ago, when we were probably a third or less of the total number of likes, we had, maybe 1,000% more activity. And I'm not kidding you. We'd have 300, 500 shares on a story, or a video. Now we get one or two,
Hmm.
or one or two likes. And we have, we have almost 60,000 followers on our page. And the reason is because Facebook has tweaked their algorithms, whatever suits them a
Right.
particular day of the week. I mean, so it's just futile. I mean, although, maybe we reach more people than I think, because another figure of theirs that I can gauge shows that, we get almost 200 likes a week. I don't know how valid anything is really.
Right.
Um, and then with YouTube tonight, the Morgile John just came out with a short video, which is rare for him. God bless him and his verbosity. He said that his subscribers are complaining to him; they're being unsubscribed, and
Yes.
that happens from time to time to people on YouTube. So, you
Oh,
know,
no, no, that is happening quite often. I
yeah.
receive people that share commentary on my YouTube videos are complaining about this same thing. That not only are they being unsubscribed, but also the comments that they are leaving are being deleted or
Wow.
disappeared, eradicated. The numbers on the videos that we have are being reduced.
And
And
that affects income for some people too.
oh yeah, totally.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
And you
because
have
it's
no
not
way to
real.
verify it yourself.
Right, exactly, because all of that is dependent on them. And so they can tell us what they want. It's just like with the voter counts, um,
Oh, right.
with who voted and how
Gee, the
many
next
voted, all that. It's all controlled and
the
contrived.
ne- the next thing we'll be worried about is they'll be listening in to us.
Right. Well, all that's happening right now too.
I know. Well, if people haven't seen it, or if you haven't seen this movie, a really good overview of what happened in Germany with the Stasi control, they were the secret police, is the movie The Lives of Others. That gives you a really good idea from a film perspective of how that happens. It's tragic and shocking, and that's what we're living in.
Yeah, it is. We are living in Orwell's
You know,
1984, and also the resurgence of the whole Nazi modern day society. I mean, and so they have even more outreach and power.
what will we see with Trump? Will he make a change in any of this? Does he recognize it, or is it going to continue the same? Will it get worse? Will it get a little better? I wonder what we'll be seeing. Do you have an idea? What do you think will happen?
Well, again, my whole thing is that I personally believe that the opposition is controlled, and that both the left, right, it's a false paradigm. And so, but again, I'm hopeful that some of a lot of my friends, they believe that he's for real, even though he flashes all the satanic hand signs every time he gives a speech.
Or
Uh,
nominates
yeah,
people who are insiders.
and basically shows his true colors when he does that, in my opinion. But still, I'm gonna give him the benefit of the doubt. I know that a lot of people, especially in the Christian alternative movement, they believe he's real. I I don't believe that any of the candidates that we've been really given choice, and that any of them have been real for a very long
No,
time. But
exactly.
again, I'm gonna give him the benefit of the doubt, and I hope that he really does drain the swamp and clean up. But it seems like he's also connected in some way to this, to Epstein and the pedophile island,
Yeah, that's
supposedly.
frightening.
Yeah, and so if he's connected, then he's compromised as well. And then if he is compromised, then that means he's controlled. And if he's controlled, then really we're not going to see anything but more of the same. Which, just like Obama, everybody thought he was going to be the great hope
Right.
and change, and all he did was perpetuate exactly Bush's policies and make them even worse. But again, I have my fingers crossed, and the whole thing with the Bible code, as far as the Trump's Bible code and being over Cyrus, the same thing with Cyrus and the Isaiah passage scripture connected to him. I'm gonna remain open minded, and not judge him until we can really see. And I hope, for America's sake, for these children's sake, for our future's sake, that he will be something different. But again, I'm pessimistic when it comes to that. But
We do
um,
live in interesting times with everything
yes, yes.
lined up as it is in the Middle East, and so many things being exposed right now that are so major. We do live in interesting times. I did hear in passing that Trump was asking Obama what he'd recommend for some picks for cabinet. So I thought that
Mm,
was
yeah. Why
okay.
would you? Yeah. All right. We'll be right back, everyone. All right. Welcome back, everybody. I do have a couple other announcements that I'd like to share with you on some of the different projects we've been supporting. Those of you that listen to our show and that follow along with what we do, you know that two of the things that we support through Endeavor Freedom, which is our nonprofit, are one, the Dare to Care team, uh, .com, which they go out and they feed the homeless and are involved directly with their particular needs and meeting their needs. And this Sunday, December 11th, they will be out in the park in downtown Atlanta feeding the homeless. The event is from 2 p.m. to 4 p.m. You can go to their Facebook page, the Dare to Care team. There's going to be a number of different events because they also are affiliated with and gather together with many other groups. Like, for instance, there's this I forget the name, but they provide showers. They have like uh, um, a mobile shower unit, and they allow the different homeless people that would like to get clean and to bathe to be able to do that during that time. And so they'll be in Renaissance Park from 2 to 4 p.m. on the 11th, which is this Sunday, I believe. And there's, for anybody that would be interested in donating to them or in providing anything, like, lately some individuals have been crocheting together hats and gloves, scarves, and giving that so that that kind of stuff can be passed out. People can buy underwear and undergarments, things like that, from the dollar store or other places, and donate that to be passed out to the homeless. We buy Bibles and have that passed out to them as well. We buy Bibles by the case and allow them to pass those out as well. And there's also a need for sleeping bags, blankets, things of that nature. You can also donate food items for them to pass out and to share with the homeless. They have a huge gathering and a number of participants that do come out. They are also working with Hands Across Atlanta, Hope Through Soap, which is that I told you about, the mobile shower unit, Showers of Blessing, the same kind of thing, Music for the Occasion, Astro Events. You can find all that on their particular website. And also, I had a long conversation earlier with Pastor William Wakesa, which he works with a Kenyan orphanage that we've been supporting for a long time. In fact, early when I first began to work with him, he was providing meals for 29 different orphans. He himself was orphaned at a young age and had to learn to basically take care of himself. And then he opened his house to other orphans and then basically ended up having an orphanage. Well, he used to try to raise money to feed them and would go and buy these food packs for very cheap to do so. But in working with him, I told him, why wouldn't you try to purchase chickens so that you could create your own food and also have get the eggs so that the eggs could feed the orphans and also to have the chickens, and then you would also be able to barter in raising the chickens, to barter and to share them um, for other items that you may need. And so he did that, and since I guess it's been about a year and a half since um, I asked him about doing that, and now they have 142 chickens, and they are also trying to purchase land so that they can then raise other livestock like goats and cattle, which he can't do that right now because they are renting the land. But if you are interested in donating to them directly as well. The name of the orphanage is Soweto Orphanage Center uh, at yahoo.com, which, if you wanted to donate to their PayPal, others have been donating to us so that we can give you a tax write off, and then we give 100% of that money to them or to the battered women's shelter here in Winder, or also to the veterans homeless shelter. Those are, four of the main nonprofits and groups that we are working with to help, basically the mandate that the Bible, the Most High, has us in supporting the orphans, the widowed, the homeless, the hungry, the naked, and so we're trying to do these kind of things, and to follow the scriptures in sharing what we can in whatever way we can to help out. And so, and again, the nonprofit Endeavor Freedom, um, it, which the website, all that is being set up and is going to be tied to Sacred Word Publishing. We are completely volunteer. There's nobody that gets paid, and 100% of whatever you donate will go directly to whichever organization or nonprofit that you would like to support. And then the other thing is that before April, we will be sending out all the tax write off information for those of you that do donate so that you can write it off of your taxes again, because anything you donate is 100%. You can write it off of your taxes, and know that we appreciate you as well. But let me just spell the name of the orphanage. It's Soweto, Soweto, orphanage, Ophaneage, Center, CENTRE, at yahoo.com. And the name of the pastor is Pastor William Wasiki Wakesa, which he's a friend of mine on Facebook. And if anybody's interested in working with or supporting his organization, they do great work. There's pictures of all the orphans and all those that they are working with and helping and have been supporting for many years now. And I've seen them come a very long ways. They are, as I said, trying to purchase some land so that they can expand and take care of more children. And also, the next thing that we're trying to do is to help them um, to fund and to get the material that they need to start a football club for the orphans, and to help them to develop their skills, and to also just to have a good time and have fun, and to be involved with the other teams in that Kenyan area. And so, um, and of course, at any time, you can also just email me at zengarcia2010 at gmail.com, or go to my Facebook page, Zen Garcia. Ask me about any of these things that we are involved in, and I can give you the details so you can go and support them directly. Or if you'd like to, you can donate to endeavorfreedom.org, or go to the Fallen Angels TV website. There's a donate button there that allows you to choose which ministry you'd like to support. And or you can go to PayPal, and the email address is general, GENERAL, at endeavorfreedom.org, ENDEAVOR, freedom.org. And just in making the donation, just tell us which group, which, that you would like to support. And as I said, we will be sending out the tax write-offs before the coming April months. And so we appreciate you and thank you. And, those of you that are looking for a um, good, good things to support these different endeavors that we're involved in, are worthy causes. And so, Kathy, let me give you a chance to comment here.
Oh, I absolutely agree. It's very hard sometimes to find a worthy place where the money is used to the maximum,
Yes.
where people are truly helped. I remember when I worked for a large bank, and and being in that environment, they force you to, especially as a manager, to contribute to the United Way. And I was pretty resentful of that because I knew how,
Money
how
would be
much was.
wasted.
Oh, exactly.
Mm.
And corruption and, fraud. And yeah. So, I always look for some place that I can donate where I know it's going to such a good purpose. And all of those organizations you're talking about are exactly that.
Yes, I always want to support something that's real. And like you, I try to and choose not to support all those nonprofits that you see their commercials coming on the TV all the time. Because most of those, 80% of the money that you donate goes towards um, the administration costs, and to paying the executive directors and the salaries of all those that are, you know, directing and guiding the organization.
And
And very little of the money actually gets down to the people that actually need it. Go ahead.
and we really are responsible for where we do give our donations um, and seek to help people. Some of these organizations that will advertise on channels that you think are trusted, I know a lot of people will just donate thinking that, oh, that they're advertising there, it must be a good organization. and they can be as bad as anyone else. And you can find this stuff out by searching on your own. Just usually a simple Google search with discernment, you can find this information out. So
Right.
it's good to know.
Yes, and if they can afford to have and pay uh, these television stations for all of these commercials that they're running, in my opinion, they're using their money wrongly already. Because how many people could just that advertisement, and I know that that drives increased funding for them, but still, how many people could they have helped with just that, what they're spending on advertising? So, but anyways, and so I know there's a lot of people out there that are looking for worthy causes to support. And I would ask people to look around your local areas, because there are many nonprofits and charities on the local level that do need support. And rather than giving to, these larger organizations, find local charities,
Or
in your
donate your
neighborhood.
time.
Yeah, or donate your time if you can't, donate money. But yeah, and it's a beautiful thing. And if we would just do more of that, there would be less suffering and less, um, just people in the need. Because the scarcity, and even like with starvation, a lot of that is created by humanity, and just the perpetuation of greed, and the 1% basically hoarding 90% of the resources and the money and profits and all of that. And it's all skewed, and we create the suffering and support it with how we choose to utilize and what we choose to support with our money and in our consumer habits. All right. So, um, when we come back from this next break, we'll get into the topic at hand. But I do want to also let people know that the two shows that we did on this whole Pizzagate, they're on the Endeavor Freedom and also Zen Garcia YouTube channels, and that I would encourage people to continue your investigation and to look further into what's going on with this issue, because as we exposed and as we brought forth in those various shows that we did, this is behavior that goes back thousands of years, and it's written into the scriptures: the seed of the serpent, the children of perdition, the Canaanites, and those that are even sitting on the thrones of the world today, the New World Order, they are tied to these bloodlines, and that these bloodlines have been supporting such behavior, ritualized abuse, the worship and the reverence of the fallen angels as their pagan gods and deities, that this kind of abomination has been ongoing. And but now that it's out in the public limelight, and there's uh, basically a spotlight on it, we need to encourage people to investigate and to look into it more, because I know that many, and I've received a lot of emails and contact from people that had told me about how they overlooked this as issue just because they thought it was completely fanciful and something that had no basis in reality. That the stories of the satanic ritual abuse, they were so far out there and seemingly far fetched that even now, for those that are just now being exposed to this, it seems just unbelievable. But yet there's absolute truth tied to and associated to it in many different ways, and that you can't just write off what you think is just beyond belief, because when you do the research on it, there's a lot of truth to it. Even with the spirit cooking, the Satanism, the cannibalism, the pedophilia, the drinking of blood, all these kind of just obscene and perverse behaviors. The elites are involved. They don't hide it. They show you in their artwork, in their depictions, in their songs, in their gatherings, in their emails. I mean, this whole Podesta and the emails that are all tied to this Pizzagate, just reading them for yourself, it's mind blowing because the code, again, the code speak, the language, the terms that are being used, once you understand their connection to the pedophilia and the definitions, uh, the do you remember some of the definitions? The pizza is that little girls, hot dogs, little boys. Do you remember some of those definitions?
Um, yeah, there was pasta and cheese, and I don't have it right in
Yeah,
front
the
of.
list. It's
Um,
easy to find. People can look it up, but
there was one thing I wanted to mention that was a news story today. It's kind of uh, ancillary to this, but we're talking human trafficking as well in this whole big story. There was arrests made in Egypt today. 45 doctors, nurses, and middlemen were arrested for human organ trade as
wow.
migrants sell body parts in order to reach Europe. I mean, that's horrific.
Yeah, it
That
really is.
but all of that is being pushed by wars and by design to upset the balance in borders and in countries, and then these people feel so hopeless that they are selling their own body parts in order to reach where they think is going to be someplace good, where
Hmm.
like France, where I mean the Islamic population is so large, and I mean that's they had the camps in Calais, and I mean, so there's all of these things that are going on that are just, the denigration of humanity, from the children to the people in the Middle East, and Americans just kind of write that off and don't think about that, and that's a very sad thing.
Here's the other thing in connection with the organ harvesting that most people don't understand and have no realization on. Even though they tell you that, you would be totally fine if you donate, like, for instance, one of your kidneys, when you donate a kidney, your life is at risk because basically what they have discovered, and they don't tell you this, is that when you donate your kidney, you are more apt um, and at risk of dying of kidney failure because there's a reason why you have two kidneys and that God made you with two kidneys. And it's because your body needs both in order to be able to filter the toxins out of your blood. And yes, if you do donate one, it will prolong the life, especially of those that um, don't have any working kidneys, but you are putting your own life at risk. And because it's making that one kidney have to work overtime and double. And so this is something that you have to consider. All right, we'll be right back, everyone. All right, welcome back, everybody. And we're going to start with the story of Adam and Eve being clothed in Genesis, but I'm going to read it from the Targum version, which, for those that don't know, have not studied, the Targum is the original Aramaic translation of the Hebrew Torah, which go back to 500 BC, to the time when they return from being exiled in Babylon for that 70 years and having assimilated Aramaic as their colloquial language. They then were no longer able to, study or to read the Hebrew once worship was restored in the rebuilt Holy Temple. And so the Targum came about as the Aramaic translations of the Hebrew Torah, and they predate the King James by 2,000 years. And so I'm going to read the story from this particular translation first in order to set the premise, because again, the Targum has much more detail and greater elaboration on almost every passage, every chapter. It says this: And Adam called the name of his wife Hava, because she is the mother of all the children of men. And the Lord God made to Adam and to his wife vestures of honor from the skin of the serpent which he had cast from him upon the skin of their flesh, instead of that adornment which had been cast away, and he clothed them. And the Lord God said to the angels who ministered before him, Behold, Adam is sole on the earth, as I am sole in the heavens above. It will be that they will arise from him who will know to discern between good and evil. Had he kept the commandments which I appointed to him, he would have lived and subsisted as the tree of life forever. But now, because he hath not kept that which I prescribed, it is decreed against him that we keep him from the garden of Eden before he reach forth his hand and take of the tree of life. For behold, if he eat thereof, living he will live and subsist forever. And the Lord God removed him from the Garden of Eden, and he went and dwelt on Mount Moriah to cultivate the ground from which he had been created. And he drave out the man from thence where he had made to dwell the glory of his Shekinah at the first between the two cherubim. Before he had created the world, he created the law. He prepared the Garden of Eden for the righteous, that they might eat and delight themselves with the fruit of the tree. Because they would have practiced in their lives the doctrine of the law in this world, and having maintained the law, uh, having maintained the commandments, but he prepared Gehenna for the wicked, which is like the sharp consuming sword of two edges. In the midst of it he hath prepared flakes of fire and burning coals for the judgment of the wicked who rebelled in their life against the doctrine of the law. To serve the law is better than to eat of the fruit of the tree of life, the law which the word of the Lord prepared, that man in keeping it might continue and walk in the paths of the way of life in the world to come. That's from the Targum. All right, and so I want to emphasize first that Adam and Eve, being clothed, were given and created. They lost their vestures of honor, which if you read the first book of Adam and Eve, it mentions how they lost their immortal bright natures, and that it was after their fall, Eve eating fruit from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, that when they ate this fruit, that's actually when their genitals appeared. They were transformed into flesh. And then Eve was beguiled by the serpent and impregnated with the child Cain, which is why when the Most High laid the curses, the punishments out against them, which, again, if you know anything about the law and the Torah, an eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth, the punishment fits the crime. It's always that way. And so, why why Eve would be cursed in childbirth if she had eaten an apple or a pomegranate or a fruit, a piece of a fig or something of that nature, just does not make sense unless you understand that the association of her having eaten of this fruit, that it has metaphorical and symbolic connotations to an act of sexual lust, which, when you look up the word beguiled in the Hebrew, it means wholly seduced. And so this is why Paul in Second Corinthians chapter 11, verse 2 and 3, he speaks about the beguilement of Eve as having corrupted her, and that this is why she was not a chaste virgin. And so, again, when you understand that they, her eating of the fruit is what led to their being transformed into flesh form, and that is why she was be, impregnated with Cain, and that's also why there would be enmity placed between the seed of the woman and the seed of the serpent, and thy sons and her sons, thy son and her sons, as it says also in the Targum translation. And so all of that comes to light and makes sense when you study and, well, study the Targum, but also you can learn this just by studying the King James, but you have to look at the individual words in the Hebrew in order for the fullness of the context and their definitions to come out, so that you can understand that this is what is really going on. Kathy, I want to give you a chance to link this to the work that Brother Jonathan just recently released, and if you would speak about that.
Well, I just wanted to remark that I never before connected the punishment in the law, eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth, to Eve's punishment in childbirth. I never connect. You know how sometimes things just go click, it just,
Mm-hmm.
this is the first time, I don't know why, but it has always made sense to me anyway, but this is the first time that that came up. I wanted to say Monday, when this latest video of Jonathan's, he's probably done more since, came out, Mystery Completely Solved, I think is the name of it. I had that morning earlier started to read the Targum from Genesis, the beginning in Genesis. And I hadn't before. It kept coming up in my mind, I want to read from the Targum too, and supplement the overall breadth of knowledge. So this is the first time I encountered this, and to me, it was startling that I had never seen it before. But it said, and you've read this, and the Lord God made to Adam and to his wife vestures of honor from the skin of the serpent. And I did a double take. What? And I didn't look any more into it at that time. I kept reading, but then I listened to Jonathan, and he was doing the same thing in this video.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, that's a Holy Spirit confirmation. I mean, I had never picked up I had bits and pieces, but not intending to. I'm going to start from the beginning. I'm just going to start reading through. And so tonight I went, or before the show, I went and I was looking, and I've always thought it was skins of fur. I mean that, and you look at all these other versions of Genesis 3:21, and it just says made garments of skin, made clothing from animal skins, serpent. I mean, I guess it would say reptile, but still. And then I looked in the Strongs, and the Strongs doesn't give anything more. But isn't that interesting? And then Jonathan, in his video, he had pictures of serpent skin next to human skin, and it looks the same. You can see
Right.
the
At a
structure.
microscopic level, when you look
Yes,
at it,
the
yes.
composition, it has the same look to it that serpent skin has. So it was really interesting. Jonathan's last few videos, the Jonathan Kleck channel, have been amazing. The revelation that he's getting, putting things together again and going deeper. I don't know if you've gotten to see some of them, but it's really something I would recommend for people to go and check out.
Yeah, I actually did watch that video. Somebody had sent it to me, and so I did look at it, and then I spoke with Jonathan after that. He had called me because he wanted to tell me about it, and I had told him, I'd already seen it, and that basically I was glad that he was studying the Targums, and then I told him that I was basically working on the chapter, because right now I am working on the part two of the trilogy, The Great Contest, which is on the enmity between the seed of the woman and the seed of the serpent. And in chapter four of this book, I take the whole story of Eve's beguilement and her eating fruit from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil from Genesis chapter 3 all the way through Genesis chapter 5. And I take the parallel accounts from the King James Version, the Septuagint, and also the Targum, and I put them in, one after the other.
Wow.
Yeah, and go through each one of the different chapters, and then I take include my commentary, and then I also break down certain words according to the Strongs in order for people to get a full understanding of what is being spoken about. But yes, when you look at the word coats in the Strong's Concordance is kathoneth, kathoneth, and it means to cover, a shirt, coat, garment, or robe. And so we always thought that that was actually meaning like a undergarment or a tunic or a long shirt. But again, it, in my opinion, is actually referencing, because it says coats of skin. And when you look up the word skin
That's not
in the
clear.
Strongs, it's or aura, and it means skin as naked, by implication, hide, leather, or hide, leather, or skin. And so, in my opinion, it's actually referencing that they were giving, um, as it says, serpent skin, which again, when you look at the human flesh at a microscopic level, it looks like serpent scales. And then when you look up the word clothe them, labash, labash in the Hebrew, it means properly wrap around, to put on as in a garment, or to clothe oneself, literally or figuratively, in apparel, to arm, array, clothe self, come upon, put on, upon, or wear. And so, again, in my opinion, that it is speaking about God clothing them, because they lost their bright nature. And so it's clothing them in skin. Because as I explained in the rest of the story, and as I read in the first part, in from the fullness of the Targum, that it was after they were clothed in skin, they were cast out of paradise. They were banished here to the earth. And they, if you read in the first book of Adam and Eve, they didn't even understand how to walk, and that
Right.
they were unused to light, as far as the sunlight. They had never experienced darkness. They didn't had no idea about as far as eating and drinking, and they could no longer see the angels. So their senses and every aspect of what was, because it also speaks about, in the Targum, that they were clothed in a light vesture, that their bodies, which to me is significant of our glorified being. The same thing when we are returned to our former state, we will be clothed in our glorified bodies. And that is what they originally had been clothed in, and that's the form that they had before being cast out and expelled here to the earth. And so, again, when you read the fullness of the story, you understand that after they were transformed into flesh, that's when they were banished here to the earth, and then the cherubim would put into place in order to prevent them from having a return to paradise. And then we find that they are here on the earth, and that's when in the very next chapter, Genesis 4, that's when it says Adam knew Eve his wife, and she conceived and bare Cain, which in the Targum, that particular verse is, and Adam knew Hava, his wife, who had desired the angel, and she conceived and bare Cain. And then she said, I have acquired a man, the angel of the Lord. And she added to bear from her husband, Adam, his twin, even Abel. So when they are here placed on the earth, because she had been beguiled by the serpent and her having desired the angel, that is what results in her conceiving and bearing Cain. And
Sin.
then, yeah.
I was just looking back at this verse or from the Targum. It's very interesting. It says that the Lord God made to Adam and to his wife vestures of honor from the
Mm-hmm.
skin of the serpent, which he had cast from him upon the skin of their flesh, which is what you see in that image in the microscopic level, just the same shape and
Right.
look to it. And then he said, instead of that adornment which had been cast away, and I think that's where you're going to be going with the Edenic.
Yes, with the
Okay.
sacred. Yes, with
That's everything I have to say. I'm going into the hot tub now.
Okay, right on. Well, I'm gonna share, yes, but that's exactly what I was gonna go into, because the vestures of honor, that is, in my opinion, the garments of power. And so we can see by the Targum references that this is the setup. And so I'm gonna share now some of the verses. First, I'm gonna read a commentary from um, Louis Ginsburg, who wrote the book The Legends of the Jews, and he says this about that particular vesture of honor, which in my opinion is the garments of power. And it says this: He gave him the clothes made of skins with which God had furnished Adam and Eve at the time of their leaving paradise. Cush himself had gained possession of them through Ham. From Adam and Eve they had descended to Enoch, and from him to Methuselah, and to Noah, and the last had taken them with him into the ark. When the inmates of the ark were about to leave their refuge, Ham stole the garments and kept them concealed, finally passing them on to his firstborn son, Cush. Cush, in turn, hid them for many years. When his son Nimrod reached his 20th year, he gave them to him. These garments had a wonderful property. He who wore them was both invincible and irresistible. The beasts and the birds of the woods fell down before Nimrod as soon as they caught sight of him arrayed in them, and he was equally victorious in his combats with men. The source of his unconquerable strength was not known to them. They attribute it to his personal prowess, and therefore they appointed him king over themselves. This was done after a conflict between the descendants of Cush and the descendants of Japheth, from which Nimrod emerged triumphant. Having routed the enemy utterly with the assistance of a handful of warriors, he chose Shinar as his capital. Thence he extended his dominion farther and farther until he rose by cunning and force to be the sole ruler of the whole world, the first mortal to hold universal sway. As the ninth ruler to possess the same power will be the Messiah, the legends of the Jews. And so here it talks about how these garments of power, which in my opinion is what is referenced in the Targum as these vestures of honor, that on top of the skin that they were given, their human flesh bodies, God also created for Adam what are called the priestly garments. They're also referenced as the priestly garments. But in legend, they are called the garments of power. And so I'm going to read now from certain passages, certain scriptures, which also detail this particular story as laid out here by Lewis Ginsburg. And I know we're almost to the break, so I'll see if I can just read this from the book of Jasher. It says this: And the garments of skin which God made for Adam and his wife, when they went out of the garden, were given to Cush. For after the death of Adam and his wife, the garments were given to Enoch, the son of Yared. And when Enoch was taken up to God, he gave them to Methuselah his son. And at the death of Methuselah, Noah took them and brought them to the ark, and they were with him until he went out of the ark. And in their going out, Ham stole those garments from Noah his father, and he took them and hid them from his brothers. And when Ham begat his firstborn, Cush, he gave him the garments in secret, and they were with Cush many days. And Cush also concealed them from his sons and brothers. And when Cush had begotten Nimrod, he gave him those garments through his love for him. And Nimrod grew up, and when he was 20 years old, he put on those garments. And Nimrod became strong when he put on the garments. And God gave him might and strength, and he was a mighty hunter in the earth. Yea, he was a mighty hunter in the field, and he hunted the animals, and he built altars, and he offered upon them the animals before the Lord. And Nimrod strengthened himself, and he rose up from amongst his brethren, and he fought the battles of his brethren against all their enemies round about. That's from the book of Jasher, chapter 7. And so you can see how those two individual stories are confirming witness for one another. When we return from break, I will share the third confirming witness on this garments of power, and they also give a little more in a different way, greater detail on this story. We'll be right back. All right, welcome back, everybody. Kathy had asked me a question about the Mormons. You know how they have their sacred underwear, and I meant to actually comment back to her, but I posted in the chat room. I would think that yes, this is probably a counterfeit, as they always tried to replicate in their own way the things of God. And so, and I was speaking about the garments of power. Nothing to do with Robert or
No, yeah, absolutely. I just think that some people might think of that, because it did come up that way to me.
yeah, and to me as well. That that would seem to be the basis for
The
that as
counterfeits,
concept.
everything. Yep.
Exactly,
Thank
exactly.
you.
Yeah, no problem at all. And so I'm gonna read this final passage, and then I'm gonna share a story that I had found from the ATS, the above top secret, which slants the story in a little bit different manner because it's bringing it from the perspective of the ancient aliens, which we know that to be false. But anyways, there's some pertinent points in the story, so I'll share it anyways. But let me read this. This is from the writings of Abraham, which dates back to the 1890s something. And it's an interesting story. It also talks about these garments of power and basically confirms the previous two stories about them as having been with Adam, passed on to Enoch, and so on and so forth. And so, all right, let me read this. It says this: When Ham, the son of Noah, entered the tent, he saw his father sleeping naked upon his bed with the sacred garments which had been given to Adam in the Garden of Eden laying nearby. Ham knew that he and his posterity could not bear the priesthood because of the curse of Cain, which was upon them. And knowing there was great power in the sacred garments, he stole them from his father Noah and hurried to his tents. Rousing his family, Ham instructed them to strike their tents and led them away to the plain of Shinar, where he dwelt and where Ham died. Now Ham's wife was named Zepta, and she was also of the seed of Cain, and they had a daughter named Zepta as well. This daughter, after the death of Ham, led a body of his people westward until they reached a body of water in the land of Zepta, which is Egypt, where they settled, and as the waters receded from off the land, they spread out and built many cities and temples. Before the death of Ham, the sacred garments were given secretly by him to his son Cush. Cush also kept them hidden, and in his old age gave them unto his son Nimrod. And when Nimrod was 20 years of age, he put on the garments, and he derived great strength and power from them. Moreover, Nimrod was instructed in all the secrets of the evil combination by his father Cain, for Cain had not perished in the flood. Well, according to this story. Wherefore Nimrod became a mighty man among the sons of men, and established his kingdom, and grew stronger and stronger in wickedness, after the order of the secret combination, which was from the beginning. For Nimrod spread his dominion over all mankind, save those in the city of Shalom, which, for those that don't know, Jerusalem is the city of Shalom, the city of peace. All right, now I've got another validation, and this is from the Mishnah, which is from the rabbinical commentaries. And it says this, which this is another aspect of the story that is not spoken about, but I guess I could tell you this as well before I read this portion. But it when Nimrod was hunting and he was with two of his mighty men, his warriors, he was hunting in the forest. Esau was there, and Esau, according to the story, murdered Nimrod, killed him, and then stole the garments of power from him. And then Esau, in running from the the bodyguards, basically the bodyguards of Nimrod, his protectors, that's when he ran to his brother's tent and ran to Jacob and asked him to hide him. And because he was famished and he was about to die from, being just perishing from the heat and from hunger, that's when Jacob asked him to sell his birthright. And Esau was like, well, I'm going to die anyways. If I don't eat, what good is my birthright? And so that's when he agreed to sell his birthright to Jacob for a bowl of porridge. And so this is the background of what I'm going to be reading here. It says this from the Mishnah. The garments which Esau put on when he went hunting were originally Adam's. They had on them figures of various animals, and hunting was thereby facilitated. As the animals, on seeing the garments, came running toward the wearer, Nimrod coveted these garments and resolved to kill Esau in order to possess himself of them. Esau, being aware of his constant danger, says, when selling his birthright to Jacob, behold, I am on the point to die. Now, I actually read it differently, that Nimrod was wearing these garments when Esau killed him. And so the story, and I believe it continues, and you can find the remainder of the story in the the book of Jasher. I don't have that before me. It's either the book of Jasher or the book of Jubilees. In one of those, it speaks about Esau being the murderer of Nimrod and in stealing the garments of power from him then. And so, and it's at that point that we lose track of the story. There's no other mention of the garments of power thereafter. But what is interesting to me is that Solomon, that when he assumes authority and becomes the king over Israel, in the stories, when you read about the folklore and the different um, the different older Arabic and also Aramaic stories in connected to both David and Solomon, Solomon possessed the power and the authority of not only the over men and kings, but he was said um, to be and have control and authority over all of the animals. And it is also said in some of these stories, which, if you're interested in reading those stories that I'm referencing, there's a book called "And It Came to Pass." It's the old stories, the folklore of David and Solomon, I believe is the name of it. I'm pretty certain that "And It Came to Pass" is the name of the book, and it's a translation of all these Arabic and Aramaic stories of Solomon and David. But in there, it describes how Solomon had authority over the animals, and that there were two specifically which he wrote upon. One was a white lion, who, being the king of all the beasts, would come to Solomon whenever he requested, and he would ride upon the lion whenever he wanted to go out into the desert or uh, to go out wherever he wanted to. And that there was also a great white eagle, of which Solomon would ride upon the back of. And it also describes Solomon as having, like Aladdin, a magic carpet, a flying carpet that was so huge he could put uh, himself and a huge contingent, including army, and a sizable army, and a bunch of other servants, and they would travel upon this and visit other lands and explore the plane of the earth while riding upon this as vehicle. So it's a totally, completely fascinating stories. But and so it makes me wonder if Solomon had in some way received or gathered or came about these garments of power because of his having the authority over all the animals, and also that Solomon had a ring of power which gave him authority over all the demons and the fallen angels. And that when you read the testament of Solomon, he was um, he was able to utilize the demons and legion and also the fallen angels to build the holy temple, the sanctuary of God, the first one. And that's why it also says in the book of Kings, Second Kings, I believe, where it describes the building of the temple, where it says that no iron implements were used in the building of the temple. And that's because, again, he had the demons and the fallen angels establish it and build it in, they use megalithic blocks and structures, and they had all those building techniques and the capacity to build in grand style in that way. And so, anyways, and so perhaps Solomon was the last one that we know of to actually have these garments of powers, but there's no story out there which affirms this. I'm just Yeah, I'm speculating here. Esau is the last one to be mentioned in Scripture as having these priestly garments. I'll get you to comment really quick if you'd like, Kathy, and then I'll go into this last final story.
No, I'm in the hot tub now.
Okay. Well, I hope you're enjoying it.
Yeah, I'm trying to relax tonight. I'll listen. I love to hear you read these.
Okay, all right.
Okay.
All right, excellent. All right, well, I'm going to finish up with this last story. This is from the Above Top Secret, and the name of the post is Adam's Priestly Garments. And again, remember that this story is written from an ancient alien perspective, and so you have to discount all of that, but there's some relevant information in there, so I thought I'd read it. Anyways, all right, it says this. Did you know that when our alien forefathers created the Adamas, again, well, that's completely false, but um, and Adam became the first king and high priest, they also made him priestly ceremonial garments that came along with his new office. Perhaps you did know that, but do you know that what eventually happened with these garments? By reading various ancient biblical texts, I've been able to track down the whereabouts of these garments until the time of Jacob, Israel. It's an incredible time span of about 2,000 years. I think it is a rather cool story, though, so I thought I would share it with people in here who are interested in this kind of stuff. From Adam to Jacob. When Adam died, Enoch got them. He passed them on to his son Methuselah before he left the earth. And it's so funny, and joined the aliens. Uh, Methuselah passed them on to Noah, and Noah took them with him in his ark when the great flood swept over the earth. Sometime after the great flood, Noah planted a vineyard and got into the business of making wine. And thus it happened that when he was really drunk, he wanted to have intercourse with one of his wives, and thus he eventually fell asleep in his tent naked. That's a whole different story because actually, what is referenced there is Ham snuck into the tent and had sex with his mother, who was Nama, and that's what resulted. That's the actual story of. But anyways, I covered that in my fourth book, Lucifer, Father Cain. Continuing. It was in this way that Ham stumbled across him and used the opportunity to steal Adam's priestly garments, which Noah had been wearing. And thus Adam's priestly garments came into the possession of the Canaanites. Ham, in turn, gave the garments to his firstborn son Cush, who kept them for a long time in secret, not telling anybody about them. But Cush, in his older days, took himself yet another wife, and by her, Cush begot Nimrod, who became Cush's favorite son, and when Nimrod had reached manhood, Cush gave him these clothes, and thus Nimrod, it is told, became very powerful, and it is even said that he became a Gibberim. Nimrod was a contemporary of Esau, and they both enjoyed hunting. Thus, it happened that Nimrod, wearing Adam's garments, was out in the woods hunting. It was on this occasion that Esau, also out hunting, stumbled across him. He lay in hiding for him, and once he found him alone, away from his bodyguards, he attacked him from behind and killed him. And thus it came about that Esau stole Adam's garments, and that's exactly the story that I read as well. Even though the Mishnah references opposite. Ancient texts go on to tell us that Esau, as the firstborn, was bound by laws to be the next high priest when Isaac died. But Esau, who hated religion, eventually sold his birthrights to his twin brother Jacob to avoid this duty. This birthright was not sold for a mess of pottage like the Bible um, it leads us to believe, because Esau was a powerful man and he didn't give anything away from free. Thus, it happened after intense negotiations that Esau eventually gave up his birthright after having being paid handsomely and given lots of valuable gifts. One of these gifts was the powerful and deadly sword of Methuselah, of which the ineffable name of God was written. As part of this deal, Jacob thus got Adam's garments as well as the deed to the cave of Machpelah. In addition to this, Esau also had to agree to abstain from any claims to the Holy Land. It is said that Esau not fully accepted this deal and that he never recognized that he had given away the deed and the rights to the cave of Machpelah. Thus, there arose a conflict between him and Jacob, and thus it happened that when Jacob was about to be buried in the cave of Machpelah, Esau showed up to stop it. I think he's actually referencing when Isaac was about to be buried in the cave of Machpelah, because Jacob and Esau they lived on long after the burial of his father Isaac, which is the story that I also read from the book of Jasher. And there was war between the sons of Jacob and the sons of Esau. But, anyways, continuing with this article, Esau showed up to stop it. It was at this moment that Cushiam, son of Dan, killed him. Also, keep in mind that Adam himself was a smaller class sized giant from 2.5 to 3.5 meters, like all the pre-flood Sethites and Canaanites. I also ascribe to that as well, and I teach that. Actually, we covered this in a show that Adam was 80 cubits tall, 120 feet tall, and so it wouldn't just fit anybody, according to the legends, anyways. Thus, not everybody would fit Adam's clothes. Perhaps that's why Cush gave them to Nimrod, who himself was a giant. Jacob was, however, not a giant, though, and he probably wanted the clothes back. Wanted the clothes back for the Sethites for historical and sentimental reasons. So, what happened with the clothes after Jacob finally got them? Well, that's perhaps something we will never find out. And so, anyways, this individual ends the story there. And it also aligns with a lot of what I have read from, except for the whole ancient alien thing. I mean, that's completely, strong delusion. But so many people do buy into that and try to interpret even the biblical stories with that kind of interpretation. It's so funny to see that. But anyways, Kathy, I'll give you a chance for final commentary. We got like 2 minutes remaining, and then we'll end this show.
Well, I just find it all real fascinating. It's something I had never thought about until I saw your post on Facebook today.
Yeah. Well, at least I gave you 7 hours.
Yeah, no, well, you sent me the notes just before the show,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
that's
Right.
okay. Yeah, anyway. No, it's fascinating, but it did, the serpent skin thing, which had just come up earlier, in the week, that's all. I mean, these, uh, what we're learning and what we know now, the fullness of the story, God's story is what absolutely I mean, it infuses me with excitement and wonder and so much more awe of the Father, the Most High, than I ever experienced before. And I thank you for that. I thank Jonathan for that. There's just so much I've learned, and so like this information is just phenomenal to me. And I like that you threw in the above top secret too. They've got that stuff going on over there, even though
Hmm.
they haven't got it all right.
Right. Right. Oh, Rayo asked, did Zen say that Adam was 120 feet tall? And yes, I did. And would you mind, Kathy, posting that show that we did on the antediluvian giants and trees
Sure.
in the
What were
chat
the
room?
Sethites giants too? That was my question in there.
Yes, the Sethites were what we would call giants up until the time of Noah. And then after the flood, even the Sethites, and of course the Nephilim giants, they were much taller. It says what, like a mile tall, according to the 300 L's. But yes, the first generations of humanity and the Sethite line were what would be considered giants in this day and age. But they were not like the six-fingered, six-toed, double sets of teeth giants. They were regular humans, just in larger stature and larger size, as I reveal in my work. All right, all. God bless. Kathy will post that link.
Yeah. Good night, everybody.
Good night, all.